Hey, thank you so much for taking time to listen to this conversation with a very good friend named Joe Sangl. Joe is going to be talking about a topic that's important to every single one of us. How do we win with money? I know we are all over the map in our financial world, and I think this conversation has something that will add value to each and every one of us. I hope you enjoy these next few moments. Joe, thank you so much for being here on this episode of More with Murphy. How many years ago was it we actually met?
I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
2015, 2016-ish.
I've heard of your name just through a number of friends of mine, and they said if you ever need someone to teach on finances or to help walk with you, got to meet Joe Sangl. And it was awesome.
Yeah, I think my reputation preceded me because I think the first time you did greet me and ask me if I was fired up, and I'm always very fired up. I don't know. So it's just the way I guess fired up finances would be a good description of me.
Absolutely. And I think part of that passion probably comes from your upbringing and your own journey. Give us the Cliff's Notes of how you grew up and how you even got into financial coaching.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the cornfields of Indiana. Mother and father, they had 6 boys. I'm the youngest of those 6 boys.
What's the age gap? The oldest?
14 years from the oldest to the youngest. So the oldest one's 14 years older, then 12 years older, 9 years older, 6 years older, and 7 minutes older. I have an identical twin.
I bet you guys had epic Thanksgiving football games.
Unbelievable. And basketball, indoor basketball during the wintertime, it was unbelievable. I have a few scars from that. But I very rarely saw money. I knew that Grandma and Grandpa would give us $2 at Christmas. All of the grandkids would get $2, and my rich aunt and uncle would give us $5. And I was enticed by this green stuff. It was very awesome, but I didn't see much of it. And so really didn't have any extra money. Decided to go to college. Our guidance counselor literally would just jump in front of me and my twin in our small high school and say, you two are going to go to college and fill this scholarship application out, fill out this application. So I filled out Purdue University's application for one reason and one reason only, is because it was free. I could afford free. And back then you had to pay money to apply to school.
Yeah.
And so I applied, got accepted in 7 days to their schools of engineering, and said, well, it's the evil arch rival of my favorite team, the Indiana Hoosiers, and Bob Knight and all the greatness of that basketball team. And now I'm going to the arch rival, but I don't care because it was a free application. And so I ended up going there and never really had any extra money, no training on money. And they say that I once heard Pastor Mark Driscoll once at a conference, he said, do you want to be used greatly by God? And everybody answers like Napoleon Dynamite, heck yes, I want to be used greatly by God. And he's like, awesome. First, he must wound you deeply. And when I heard that, I was like, that is exactly why I am so passionate about teaching about personal finances, because I've got a lot of money wounds.
Yeah.
And because of that, I feel like when somebody has a wounding in a specific area, they're more effectively able to minister because they understand it at a deeper level.
Well, it's that passage in scripture. He who has been forgiven much loves much. He who has been forgiven little loves little. I think if you've actually felt the pain of financial challenge, strife, hardship, or the repercussion of bad decisions compounded over time, it's like when you see people driving down a road and it's a cliff. I mean, you will shout. I mean, you do anything you can, like, do not go down there. Do not open that box.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not good.
Well, I always say, I've tried the broke side and I've tried the surplus and margin side. I like the margin side a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's a lot less agony, a lot less pain, a lot less stress. And, frankly, I sleep better. And a lot of people give a lot of money to sleep well. And I would say, try building some margin. Warren Buffett, the famous Oracle of Omaha, intermittently the wealthiest person on the planet. He's always in the top 5. He was asked recently, they have $140 billion in cash right now. Berkshire Hathaway does. And, they own Geico Insurance, Hellsberg Diamond, John Mansville Insulation, Chore Time Brock Grain Bin Systems, all this stuff. He owns Kraft Heinz, Pampered Chef, just some small companies. Clayton Homes, the largest home builder in the nation. They have $140 billion in cash. And they said, aren't you going to deploy this money? Aren't you going to spend it? He's like, well, maybe we should. I will when I find a deal, but I will promise you one thing. We sleep well at night.
Yeah.
And it's what he's saying. His margin provides space. It allows you to be able to rest and allows you to focus on what really matters.
You know, it's interesting. We wrapped up recently at Cypress Church a series called Peace of Heart and Peace of Mind. And it was fascinating when you actually dig into it. And I have a good friend of mine who we did episode, I think it was episode 2 on More with Murphy, a counselor for Serena and I, and a life coach that we talked to, Jim Kress. He actually said there's more shame often associated with financial issues than there are many other issues of addiction in life, because we have so many attachment issues. That it's really not money itself, but we're trying to buy stuff to make us feel good that we cannot afford. So the money is just the expression of where our heart is or where our mind is. What have you found again, you know the statistics of the financial, where people are in America, the data's not good. How does that make people feel as you've worked with them?
Well, it's called personal finances for a reason. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And it is a reflection. A lot of people feel like it's a reflection of their intellect. It's a reflection of their status in society. And they know that the mistakes they've made, they're embarrassed about them, and there's deep shame. And I think it's interesting, what that counselor shared with you. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
In fact, many times there's spouses who are the bill payer. They get in a financial pinch. They feel like their spouse is stressed. They don't want to put more stress on them. So they pull out the credit card to cover this gap just this once. And in their mind, they're like, I'm going to use this tax refund to cover the difference. I'm going to use this bonus we're expecting. Well, they never tell their spouse that they put this money on the credit card. So when the bonus shows up, they can't bring themselves to tell their spouse, hey, you can't use this money for this because I need it for this other debt I've ran up. And before you know it, they have all this hidden debt.
Yeah.
And they literally titled it financial infidelity because it has the same things as marital infidelity. And that when spouses find out that their loved one has been hiding debt from them, it has all of these feelings of being cheated on, being cheated of opportunity, that you hid, deceit. And so it's a tremendous challenge. And I just find that people do not want to talk about their financial challenges until they've overcome them. Then they want to tell the world. So it's interesting to me that people are locked in thinking they're the only ones that are broke, the only ones struggling with money, the only ones who's not able to invest, the only one that is really trying to make it to Thursday. That's how far their vision can go. And they believe they're the only ones there. And that's exactly what I found, is that pride is the number one contributor to people staying broke. They won't go seek help. They won't go seek wisdom. They won't seek counsel. We all know coaches help us go farther.
Yeah.
Right? All these people in sports, many of them, Michael Jordan, always gave credit to Phil Jackson, his coach. Tiger Woods, when he came back, he tried to come back without a coach. And that did not work well. He went and got coaching again. He's won the Masters again. And so they attribute to coaching. And we all see this example of how coaches really matter. And then we try to operate with our personal finances without a coach. Is it any wonder we struggle?
And I think it's, you hit on the goal is peace, but peace is not a particular amount.
It is.
Because
not.
I've known people, friends I'm particularly thinking of in other countries that monetarily speaking have nothing, but yet the level of joy and peace and happiness, among them, the families, it was like, I know millionaires who would write several $100,000 checks if they could have that level of peace and contentment in life. And I've known many people who have high affluence, but they're miserable. They don't sleep at night.
I have a name for that issue. I call it the new zero. And I think it's the saying when we have zero, well, that's the old zero. And then we pray, Lord, if I could just have 1 month's expenses in the bank, man, we would have it made. We would be living then. And let's say that's $5,000.
Yeah.
And they work hard. They just get there through budgeting, through a bonus, whatever it might be. They have $5,000. Whatever the amount is, once it's there about 6 months, it becomes the new zero. And so now life happens and they have to spend 1,000 of it. They're down to 4,000. They go around acting like they're broke, and then it changes. They get to 20,000. Once they have it 6 months, that's the new zero. They get to 100,000. It becomes a new zero after 6 months. And I think it's one of these things that if we're not careful, we will discredit everything that has happened in our lives and all of the good work and all the good decisions because we get used to it. It becomes normal for us. And we forget just how far we've come. And I think for me, I've always just tried to make sure that margin is important, very important. But I'm not going to put all of my hope in whatever my margin is.
Yeah.
I'm going to make sure that my hope is in, the provider of it. And my joy, my peace comes from knowing that I get to live every day doing what I've been made to do. And that's really what I want for everybody, is for them to be able to do whatever they're made to do, whether that's a $100,000 dream or a $100 million dream.
Yeah. We have people who are all over the faith spectrum who listen to this, all over the financial spectrum, and all over really I would say the spectrum of even discovering what that life's passion or that life's journey is to live it out. And I'm going to simplify this. You correct me if you see it different, but I think there's 3 basic categories of people when it comes to finances. And for me, I imagine it almost to surfing, although I'm not a big surfer, although I do love body surfing. Used to be Myrtle Beach, but if there's bigger waves, Costa Rica, we've been there. That's awesome. But there's some people, and the data says, 3 out of 4 people who listen to this are living paycheck to paycheck. They have bills. Maybe it was not the best decisions. Maybe there's legitimate reasons. They didn't have margin, whatever. But there's some people that are under the wave and they're just getting hammered by the wave all the time. They don't feel they can kind of climb, like they're financially drowning.
Yeah.
There's other people who they're not so much in debt that much, but they're just kind of hanging out. But then there's others, I think a small percentage, they paddled like crazy and they caught the wave and now they're riding on top and they're going places they never imagined they could go, and they're getting there faster than if they were swimming themselves. Do you see the financial categories of those who are in it?
That a lot.
Those who are just kind of hanging, they're not drowning, but they're not really going anywhere.
I think we should go to Hawaii and go surfing and test it out. I mean, on the North Shore, that'd be awesome. And I have surfed in Hawaii, but in Waikiki Beach, not on the North Shore where the waves get
Now, is that by
tall.
Yourself, or the guy gives you a shove to get you started?
No, with my bride. And,
dude, you're the
we
man.
both were able to surf in like 5 times. And I was
Good for
exhausted.
you.
And so to just build on your analogy, the paddling out was exhausting.
Okay.
Once you got on it, because I was like, this paddling is exhausting. This is horrible. I hate surfing. But when you catch your first wave, all you want to do is do that again.
Yeah.
And so I put it in 3 categories that match that.
Yeah.
And so those underwater getting pounded by the waves, I call that struggling. They're just trying to get air, trying to get oxygen, trying to make it to Thursday.
Yep.
And that is 75% of people. In fact, prior to the pandemic, in December of 2019, the Federal Reserve came out with a statistic that said 3 out of 4 Americans, if faced with an unexpected $400 bill, could not pay cash for it. That's prior to the pandemic. So think about where that is now.
And that's a financial issue that emotionally, relationally, I mean, it's going to impact you in every category.
And I know for those families, and we've met with many of them, as they faced the pandemic, they literally had no idea what was going to happen to them, to their house, to their housing, if they're renting, for their family, for their children.
And that's the majority of people listening.
It's 3 out of 4. And then so it's struggling. And then I call the ones that are swimming, they're kind of on top of the water, they've got oxygen. I call that stable. They're stable. They're getting oxygen. They're getting by. Things are good. There may be a little bit extra, but they're not really catching the wave. And then I call those that are on the wave, I call that surplus.
Yeah.
They have more than enough. They're in abundance. They're really winning with money.
So if you feel like you're drowning financially, which at one point in your personal life you were.
100%.
If you feel like you're drowning, you're the majority, you're 3 out of 4. What are the steps that help us go from struggling to surviving and eventually to surplus?
That's a great question. And so I'm going to give a weird answer to start. And I think the listener, I don't want you to turn this off. You make sure you continue to listen to more episodes of the podcast, because this actually has more implications than you believe. The first step is not a financial decision. It is to take time to sit down and write down your plans, hopes, and dreams. I call them your PhDs, your plans, hopes, and dreams. Get a PhD, get a doctorate in your plans, hopes, and dreams, the things that fire you up, the things that you want to do. And there's two types of them. You have the dreams that are moments, they're events, they're accomplishments, and there's others that are lifestyle type dreams, like the type of house you want to live in, the type of career you want to have. Those are lifestyle things. The moments are the concert you want to go to, the mountain that you want to climb, the deer hunt, the scrapbooking event, whatever it might be, the cartoon, comic book convention, whatever it might be, those things that fire you up, things you want to do for your kids, write all those down. And the reason this is important is when you're struggling, you'll look at your bank account and say, I can't do any of these. And if you're allowing your bank account to dictate your dreams to you, you will have $4.13 dreams like I did.
Yeah.
But if you turn it around and say, I'm going to let these dreams power me, then the financial decisions are much easier. Like, I don't know if you enjoy budgeting. I mean, I know that I enjoy it only because there's an Excel spreadsheet involved. That's the only reason I like it. But budgeting in and of itself does not fire me up. It doesn't fire most people up. But when I realize that helps me fund my plans, hopes, and dreams, well, now I can get fired up about it. I'll stick to this because I like the payoff of it. So the first thing to do is write down your plans, hopes, and dreams. And then we have something called the I was broke, now I'm not ladder. Dave Ramsey has his 7 baby steps. Crown has the money map. I have the I was broke, now I'm not ladder. And the first step is writing down those plans, hopes, and dreams. The second thing is to fight like crazy to build an emergency fund equal to 1 month's worth of expenses. And if you do that through a tax refund, through budgeting better, through selling something that most of us have stuff with, in our garages so we could sell. We keep saying we're going to use it. Like I have an RC airplane. I built it from scratch 21 years ago. It has went on one maiden voyage. It has never flown again, but I keep saying I'm going to. I should have sold it long ago, right? It's just dead money sitting there. You could sell some stuff. And I would really encourage you within 2 months, make it the highest priority to get that margin account. Because if you get 1 month's worth of expenses saved up, you can go to monthly budgeting regardless of how often you're paid. And it allows you to start thinking beyond this Thursday. It allows you to think months ahead.
Give me the website. Do you have materials that can help us in the process?
Absolutely. So the ladder is located at our website, iwasbrokenowimnot.com/ladder. So any tool, we have over 100 free financial tools there at iwasbrokenowimnot.com.
Yep.
And just Google I was broke. There's nothing else remotely named like our website. And just put a /ladder after it. You can download a PDF of the ladder. It's free.
So when you say a month's worth of expenses, I mean, is that like credit card statements?
Yep. Whatever
every
it
bill
takes
that
to make
comes
your
in.
household run.
Okay.
And since most people spend all their money every month, then whatever 1 month of income for you is, that's probably the number. So if you're struggling, that's your first goal.
So write down hopes and dreams, number one. Find out
Get
how to
1 month's
fund
worth
it.
of expenses.
Yep.
And then the third thing is I want you to make sure you start contributing to your company retirement plan enough to get the match.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a company retirement plan, to contribute to a Roth IRA, $100 a month.
Okay.
And somebody might be listening and saying, Joe, I cannot do $100 a month. Okay, do 50. Joe, I can't do 50. Do 25. And the reason I want you to just start investing is you'll suddenly pay attention when they say the Dow went up today or the Dow went down today. And you'll start realizing that you don't have to work for all of your income. So I would just ask the podcast listener who's struggling paycheck to paycheck right now, saying, do you have any income showing up that you don't have to work for? And for most people, that's a novel concept. I could make money without working for it. And one way to do that is through investments into the marketplace, into mutual funds. And all of those people, the hundreds of thousands of people who work for those publicly traded companies, guess what? They show up to work to earn a paycheck. I call that type 1 income. But guess what? When they produce profit, guess who gets the profit? You do as the owner of those shares of that company. And that's really how your mutual funds are working in your retirement account. And once you get there, what I found is when you're getting enough to get the company match and you got a month's worth of expenses in the bank, you move from struggling instantaneously overnight to stability.
That's the principle of your book, Oxen, isn't it?
That's right. So the principle is from a verse that I found in the Bible. And I know we have people of all walks of life here, but Proverbs 14:4 really is a helpful verse no matter where you're at in your faith journey.
Just wisdom for life.
It says, where there are no oxen, the manger is empty, but from the strength of an ox comes an abundant harvest. And really, I grew up on a farm in Indiana, and I had a bunch of old order Amish neighbors, and they still use draft horses or oxen to till their fields.
Wow.
And I always imagine it in a word picture saying, it's really saying you need oxen to be able to till up large fields. And I always imagine this Amish guy going out into the field and saying to his wife, hey, baby, because I'm sure that's how they talk to each other, saying, hey, baby, I'm going to go out and I'm going to till up 80 acres by hand today with a shovel and a hoe. And that's not possible. Like, how far could you get with a shovel and a hoe by hand, relying only on yourself? You would have a nice garden. And this is the great learning I got, that you'll have a nice garden, which means you'll have enough to eat. There'll just be nothing left over. If you truly want an abundance, you need oxen. Then you can till up 80 acres and you can have an abundance far more than what your family could consume so that you could prosper. And while many of us don't live on a farm today, this is what I learned is we need to have financial oxen who carry the load for us, and they produce an abundant harvest. Now we have to guide them. The farmer still has to guide the ox.
Yep.
Left alone, that ox is going to leave little presents all over the pasture. He's going to stink. He's not getting in the yoke. But if you can get it in the yoke and they pull in the right direction, and you know, a modern day farmer, they use a John Deere tractor nowadays, and they can farm 1,000 acres or more.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have these unbelievable beasts of burden that can carry the load, but they still have to guide them. And so that is the principle of oxen. And what I like about oxen is, you know, they'll have baby oxen and they can multiply. You can get a whole herd of oxen. And this is mutual funds. It could be precious metals, real estate investing. It could be a small business or a franchise or your regular retirement account. And all of those, they do one thing. They help your money grow without you having to work for those dollars.
Is there any common themes that you see in people who have progressed from the bottom of the wave or struggling to surviving to surplus? Are there any common themes or traits that you see in the people as they kind of work their way through?
100%. What I find is that people who are struggling, they have weird habits that people who are surplus do not have. For example, one of the first 5 things they do every morning is check their app to see what their bank account balance is. People who are surplus do not check their bank account balance feverishly. They just don't do that. Number 2, people that are struggling, one of the things that happens in their life is they know exactly the rules of their payday. They know, oh no, payday landed on a holiday, which means I have to go it's on the weekend and it won't deposit. And what I found is that people are in surplus, they forget when it's payday. They just forget. It doesn't mean it's less important. It just means it's not as important to that day. And so this worry, this fear, this constantly stress being against the edge, I will just say clearly, I had no idea the weight I was carrying when I was broke. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Until I achieved what we call rung 2 of our ladder, a month's worth of expenses in the bank. And all of a sudden, like even now, I can still feel it. The ability to just breathe.
Yeah.
The ability to hear my wife say, hey, I think something's wrong with the car, and not just instantly tense up and freeze up and freak out. To hear Christmas is coming in 30 days. I forgot. And now it's like, hey, we've saved money for that. We can just pay money for that. Margin gave me that space.
Yeah.
So that changes people. And what I found also is people who are struggling, they think, man, when we get here in surplus mode, oh man, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. They have a list.
Yeah.
And for all the people who are surplus, most of them, they went through that ladder. They're just a little bit ahead of you.
Yep.
You need to know that. Most people don't start at surplus. Most are not trust fund babies. And they got there, and what they want when they get to the surplus is totally different by the time they get there. Their desires change. The things they want to do with their wealth changes.
Well, and I think that's, I mean, we've all heard the reports, people who basically are broke, but win the lottery, go back and revisit them, you know, a short number of months later, the overwhelming majority, they're right back where they started.
That's right.
Or quite frankly, ESPN did a episode, this is a few years ago, and I think it was a 30 for 30, and it might have been called Broke, but it shows young athletes who have not been prepared how to handle millions upon millions of dollars, make hundreds of millions in their careers, and then they are broke.
Yes.
It tells you it can't just be a financial issue. It has to be a a mind heart issue that you've grown into it, and you can manage whatever it is that you do have.
And it became so prevalent that these major sports leagues, professional leagues, now have financial coaches to coach athletes to say, you're getting ready to encounter this money. And it can literally change your life in a positive way, but you need to know these things.
Yeah.
And they have athletes, like I believe it's Scottie Pippen, who earned $120 million in his lifetime and had to declare bankruptcy. Kurt Schilling, the famous pitcher of the Red Sox, the bloody sock. He went broke and he invested in a business, but he put it all in one basket. He didn't have a diversified portfolio. And they have them come back and do these, hey, don't do what I did, learn from my mistakes. And that's really powerful. But here's one thing that I would just say, as people move from struggling to surplus, when I was moving from that, like I would go to the mall. I wanted everything in the mall. Remember when you used to go to the mall? Malls are like going out of business because of Amazon.
Now it's called scrolling online.
Now you go to Amazon, just spend like crazy, and the smile box shows up on the hour. But what I found out is I wanted all that stuff. And then when I got there and it could buy all of it, I could buy them all. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And so I think you realize how incredibly difficult that journey is to rise above being broke, and you don't ever want to go back. And it's that process of learning, that education over time, that really, I think, transforms you, that makes you a wiser money manager.
Talk about the role, and again, I would say for those who are listening who they do have a relationship with God through his son Jesus. There's a bunch of people listening, they really don't. I mean, they've heard of God, but being a Christ follower is not a part of their life, but yet we all deal with money.
Yeah.
What role does giving play in the journey through these stages and up the ladder?
It's a powerful thing. And, I think it's interesting. God created the world. Whether you believe that or not, there are fundamental facts of the universe that just take place. Gravity is 9.816 meters per second squared. It just is. If you like English units, 32.2 feet per second squared. The Earth is going to rotate on its axis about every 24 hours. It's just going to happen. It's going to spin around the sun about every 365 days and a quarter. So every fourth year we have leap year. Water is going to boil 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, 212 Fahrenheit. And it's just facts. Seasons go in order. Spring, summer, right? Fall, then winter. It just goes in order. And so there's these principles that are in place all around us. And in the Bible, it speaks to all those, that those are set in order by our Creator. And so I would just say one of those things that's set in order is that we are created to be givers, that we are social beings. Humans are social and we care for one another. We are created with this heart that cares for one another. And when you realize that there are needs greater than yours, and when you realize how far you've come, and you start to want to give a hand up, not just a hand out, a hand up, and there's something within the human spirit, I just challenge anyone, even those far from Christ, to just say, do you feel good when you give? They will all say yes. In fact, I had one of my friends, he's an agnostic. He said, I think giving is one of the most selfish things you could do. I was like, Ben, I don't understand that. It seems like an oxymoron that giving is one of the most selfish things you do. He's like, well, why do you give, Joe? And I said, well, I give, because it feels good to help others. And he's like, see, you give because you want to feel good. And he pivoted it on me. And I'm like, you know what? You're right, but you're also wrong. The reason I give because it feels good is because God created me to be a giver as he created you, Ben, and any other person listening. We love the things that we love, we want to give to. That just is a fact. You have children, and one reason we love them so much is it costs $250,000 to raise a kid to age 18. That doesn't include college or weddings. And so, wherever your money goes, your heart goes with it. That's one reason why you love your kids so much. You spend $250,000 on each of them. And some of you are thinking that's a deal. Listen to the podcast. You want to find the $250,000.
And your parents had 6.
Yeah, that's right. My parents didn't spend $250,000 on me, I promise. They sent us out to forage a little bit, I think. We raised Ferdinand the bull and took him to market at 1 year. It was a lot cheaper. But I would just say, this thing of giving, you see these principles. There's many people who's, for example, Warren Buffett is also agnostic, wealthiest guy on the planet. And he said, I'm giving away all my wealth. 100%. And he's not saying there's not a God. He's just saying, I don't know. But he within him, he's compelled to give it away. And so he signed the giving pledge that Bill, Melinda Gates, and all of them have signed to say, during my lifetime and at the end of my life, all of my wealth is going to be given away to causes that lift up my fellow man. In fact, he made a bet. He gambled in 2007 and 8. He was mad at hedge fund managers who were charging 2 and 2.5% to, gamble money for their investors. And he was like, I bet I could put my money in the Vanguard 500 index fund and make no changes for 10 years. And I'll put $500,000 up against anybody else's $500,000. The winner gets the money to go to the charity of their choice, saying, I can beat you. And you're charging billions of fees to get people to bet on it, let you bet for them. And so one person took him up on it. And in 2017, you can see this in his letter to his shareholders, which Warren Buffett's letter to shareholders is fantastic reading. You should just read them. It's humorous. It cracks me up. But he said, here's the results. And the hedge fund manager, the best he had done in 5 hedge funds was like 60% in 10 years time. 3 of them were less than 10% total cumulative gain in 10 years. Meanwhile, the Vanguard 500 index fund had went up 130%. And he said, making Girls Inc. of Omaha, I think they're going to be anxiously checking their mailbox come January. And he was right. And so I think it's interesting, here we have the wealthiest person ever who says he's an agnostic, who is compelled to give. Why is that? Because he is created in the image of God. We are all created in the image of God. We are created to be givers. And when we give, it just feels so good. So maybe it is selfish, as my friend Ben says.
Yeah.
But I just say, I'm just doing what I was made to do.
Talk just briefly for those who are listening, who are believers and followers of Jesus Christ. Just talk briefly about the principle of the tithe as a biblical but a financial principle and how important it is to honor God first.
Yeah. I will say, many people, they have different journeys to becoming tithers. Some start with some small percentage and then they become a full tithe over time. Others just dive right in. I was a dive right in guy. And I did it, and I did a concept called angry tithing. It's what I've titled it. It's one of those where you're so broke and you're so frustrated that you're reading this verse in Malachi 3:10 where the Lord says, test me in this. And the test is in bringing the whole tithe into the church, in the storehouse. And he says, and if you test me, see if I not throw open, it's the promise, see if I not throw open the floodgates and pour out so much blessing, you don't have room enough to store it, to contain it. And I was like, okay, well, when you're broke, you got to trust God. So I'm like, I'm going to do this.
That's like the recess. I double dog dare you.
Yeah,
I take it.
I'm going to skip it. I'm going to go to triple dog dare you, like Christmas Story, the movie.
Yeah.
And so I did it. And, I wrote a check. Back then it was a check. And it's like, let's see. And there's something that happened. My heart transferred with that.
Yep.
And what I find is that wherever your money flows to, you just pay attention to it more. You invest in Walmart stock, suddenly you're telling your friends, don't shop at Target, go to Walmart. And you go to Walmart and you're like, I own this place. I own aisle 7, part of aisle 9, and you're checking the stock price. Why? Because some of your money is tied to it. And so I all of a sudden I was paying more attention to the church, to the mission of the church. And so I was like, hey, that feels great. I love being a part of this. Great work is being done that is impacting this community in very practical and material ways. Hey, we have a food bank. We have this clothing where people can just get food and clothing when they desperately need it. It's a free clinic in our community. It's staffed by doctors who give her their time, but it provides the medicine and the supplies they need. It's talking about the turkey drive that we do for Christmas and all the just great things. We built playgrounds for all the schools that didn't have them, the low-income schools, and put shoes on the feet of every kid who is in a low and free and reduced lunch school. Yep. How amazing is that? And I'm like, I want to be more of that. So I made it consistent, my habit. And what I found is that giving not only feels great, but it prevents me from becoming greedy. It keeps my heart inclined to what grieves the heart of God. And, I find it's interesting. When you start tithing, you seem like this is a lot of money. God, I want to teach you about math, God. Have you ever taught God about math? It's very interesting. It's like, God, check this out. I can't make it on 100%. And God, I'm an engineer. God, I'm an engineer. If I take 10% and give it to you, I'm left with 90%. And I can't make it on 100%. How on earth can I make it on 90%? I mean, I think that's real.
Yeah.
And a lot of people face that. And is it just magic? And I would say it is not magic. It is just God's system.
Yeah.
That he will provide for the needs of those who provide for the needs of the kingdom. And so what I found is it forced me to become a better money manager.
Yeah.
If I said, hey, this is a priority, then other things have to go. And it caused me to sacrifice. And it turns out in America, we don't like to hear the word sacrifice. We don't like that word.
Yeah.
But you know what? When you sacrifice, it gets your attention. It's an exchanging of something I desire for something I want more. And it made me a better money manager. It gave me eyes to see that I'd never seen before. I all of a sudden started seeing opportunities in business, opportunities in real estate, opportunities for investments. And I literally look at them and say, how on earth did this stuff happen in my life? And then I can say, hey, there's this correlation. That's the moment that I started prioritizing giving and saving. And all of a sudden, all of my luck started to get better for some reason.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a connection to that. And now I can say confidently, 20 plus years into that journey, it's 100% that when you put God first, he will open the floodgates of heaven. And I love what Bishop T.D. Jakes says. When you test God in this area, yes, there might be some financial blessing. There might be. But the greater blessing is that God will give you access to things you should not have access to, people who give you access to things that you should never, and you're like, how am I amongst this group of people? I am the mule invited to the Kentucky Derby. How am I here?
Yeah.
And then you look at it and say, only God, and you draw that correlation again.
You remember the movie, one of my favorite top fives at least, Remember the Titans?
Oh, yeah.
And I love the part, I think it's Denzel Washington, the coach, and the linebacker, he says, hey, here's how we're going to do it. And he goes, get on the bus. And he goes, before you do, who's your daddy?
Oh,
you remember that part? He goes, tell me who your daddy is. And he goes, you, coach. Honestly, I think for a believer, tithing, it's a reminder, he's my daddy. Like every time I receive, first part goes back to you.
That's
You're my
so good.
Lord. It's every, and I was like, why not just once a month? Why not once a quarter? Why not once a year? And I think part of it, God just wants that simple, hey, who's your daddy?
And I teach this principle to my kids every Halloween. When they get this trick or treat or trunk or treat money, I teach them about tithing to the Father. And I do. They all know about it. They hate it. And I make them give me the first 10%, the first. I don't want the sweet tarts. I want the Reese's cups. I want the Kit Kats, right? And so I teach them this, but it's a humorous thing of teaching that, hey, here's the thing, child. I as a father, I love you. I want to give you everything in the world. I'm looking out for your best. But here's the deal. If I bought you the Big Mac and French fries, I bought it for you. I am your source. And you're not going to let me have a French fry, a hot French fry? Well, then I might want to bless you less because I can't trust you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so I have all these fun little things, but everybody in my household, all three of my children, know clearly about the concept of tithing and tithing to the Father and being reminded of your provision. And you know what? As a result, I got one that's out of the house and she's a giver.
Yeah.
She's one of the biggest givers I've ever seen. And I've seen it in my 10-year-old and my 7-year-old. And there's nothing, I think, as a parent that makes your heart melt like seeing your kid become a giver. It's so awesome.
That is so awesome. Incredible. Hey, let me jump topics on you. Let's talk a little bit about investing.
Okay.
For the young
up.
couple, there you go. The young couple who's listening right now and they have super young kids, college seems like a million years away. Mm-hmm. It's coming. What are the most practical ways that can help prepare for educational cost?
That's a great way that you phrase that. Seems like a million miles away. And so I would encourage you, start saving in a 529 plan for your kids right now. Choose your state's plan if your state has income taxes. We know people live in all states.
Yep.
We know Wyoming doesn't have state income tax, Montana, Florida, none of them have state income tax. If you don't have a state income tax, I encourage you to invest in Virginia's 529 plan. The 529 plan money is just like a 401k or similar retirement plan. You invest in mutual funds. It grows tax-free. And at college age, you can use it for any qualified educational expense. and in any accredited college in the U.S. 50 states or its territories. So you don't have to use it in that state. That's a common misconception. If you have a state plan, I live in South Carolina, the Future Scholar 529 plan, I can deduct the first $2,000 I contribute from my state income taxes. So that's why you'd want to invest in your state's plan if they offer that. And so we have a list of all the 529 plans for all the states on our website, and I'll provide a link to that. But here's what I encourage you to do. If you have a 0-year-old, right, they just cried when they were born, that is an 18-year notice they're going to college, maybe, right? And so if you invest $100 a month, starting right now, and then within the first 5 years of their life, get that up to $200 a month, you'll have six figures when they go to college. In general, if
so you might be able to pay for a semester by the time they're
maybe
freshmen.
you'll pay for a semester. But we know everyone who's listening, their child is going to be above average intellectually and athletically, so they're going to get scholarships to bridge the gap. And so I encourage you with that. And if you have children that are going to be in college at the same time or any chance of that, so if they're within 5 years of each other, have separate 529s for each of them. And another nuance to the 529 is you can now use up to $10,000 a year from the 529 for K through 12 private school tuition.
Okay.
Which is a big deal, changed in the last 2 years. So that can be a way, if you have a kid in private school, for you to be able to get some tax advantages by running it through your 529 before you pay for the tuition.
Give me the order on the ladder for funding our own retirement before, simultaneous to the 529.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
So it's rung number 6 in our ladder when you would start contributing to the 529. So
run through the ladder real quick. Hopes and dreams.
Rung 1, plans, hopes, and dreams. Rung number 2 is a month's worth of savings, a month's worth of expenses and savings. Rung 3, contribute enough to get the company match or $100 a month, whichever's greater. Rung 4 is to pay off all non-house, non-business debt. So student loans, credit cards, furniture, I owe mom and dad, non-house, non-business debt. That takes on average 12 to 36 months. Okay. The average person will free up $1,250 to $2,000 a month in payments, car payments, student loan, add them up. And then rung 5, you build your savings that were in rung 2 to 1 month's expenses, build it to a minimum of 3 months worth of expenses. If you have crazier income, maybe you want 5 or 6 months worth. Once that's done, rung 6 is to place 15% of your gross income, your pre-tax income, into tax advantage investments. That would include your 529. Rung 7 is to pay off your house and business debt if you have it. Rung 8 is to invest 30% of your gross income into tax advantage investments. I like to say at that moment, you can not only bless many, you can bless the multitudes. Think about 30% of your income going into an investment every month. And then rung number 9 is to live what we call a fully funded life, being able to do exactly what you've been put on earth to do, regardless of the cost or the income it might generate.
So drop back down to the 15%.
Yep.
Where do we invest that?
So that can be in your retirement plan. Get the company match. If you like the investment options in your 401k or 403b, 457 TSP, similar type thing, then you can go on up to your 15% there, or 12% to that and 3% to the 529 plan. All of them are tax advantaged. It could also, if you don't like the investment options or your employer doesn't offer this, as long as you have earned income, you have to have earned income. So there's a difference between unearned income, which would be like rental income. You didn't earn it.
Okay.
It's unearned income versus stuff you've worked for, you've traded your hours and time for. You can have a Roth IRA. And you can set up a Roth IRA by pulling up schwab.com, and you can set it up and you can start with as little as $25 a month.
Okay.
And so that's where we're talking about getting your money to work for you. And one of the things I mentioned, you said this college seems like a million miles away. I remember when my baby girl was born, it seemed like college is forever away. It's just never going to happen. But I should start saving.
Yeah.
So I started with $100 a month, but it took me till she was 4 to get started. So what I would just say is don't delay.
Yeah.
Set it up automatically. Stop this podcast. Pull up the website right now and set up the account. Takes 15 minutes. And that one decision can be a $100,000 decision. Game changer. And so when I got debt free, except for my house when she was 5, I went to $200 a month. And then when we went to look at colleges in her junior year, I got to look around knowing her college was 100% covered. That account had grown to more than $100,000.
Wow.
And I'd put less than half that money in there.
That's the beauty of compounding.
It's the beauty of
working
compound
for
interest. And you know what's beautiful is, and this is the blessing of the Lord, I believe, is God gifted my daughter academically and athletically and she ended up with a full ride scholarship, and we need almost none of it. And one of the nuances of 529 is if your child has a scholarship, whether academic or athletic, you can pull out an equivalent amount to that scholarship free of penalty. And that's a big deal. So I think she's going to buy her first rental house with the proceeds from it.
Good for her.
And so I think that's great because I'm trying to set up the next generation. It says in Proverbs 13:22, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. And I think that's of money. Of course, it says that, but I think it's also of wisdom, passing on that shared wisdom. And guess what? Guess what seems like a million miles from now? Similar how college did. Retirement for me. But you know what? Pretty sure it's going to show up one day. And that's why I'm saving and investing diligently.
You talked about your organization's matching fund.
Mm-hmm.
What like mutual funds?
Yeah.
I mean, give me the Cliff's notes here.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit. Let's say we got somebody who's struggling, but they are contributing enough to get the match.
Okay.
3%, let's say. And they've heard 15%. What is a way to get there? I found a hack that is awesome to get there. And that is if you get a pay raise, let's say a 3% pay raise, you take half of that and increase your contribution to your retirement plan. So let's say you're contributing 3%, you get a 3% raise. Increase your contribution to 4.5%. You'll still get a 1.5% raise at your household level.
Yep.
So you feel like things are still good. You don't even miss it. The next year you get another 3% raise, hopefully. And now it's 6% you're contributing. You still get a raise. And over the course of about 5 or 6 years, you can get up to that 15% and never really have felt it.
Yeah.
If you've got a 22, 23-year-old in your household and they're just getting a job, just get them by the shoulders and tell them, hey, you're going to blow all this stuff on food anyhow. So, put 15% in there right now. You won't even really notice it. And so that's 2 ways that I would say to get to 15%. Now we talk about different types of investments. So tax advantage investments is what I'm interested in. And so for longer term stuff. And so this could be mutual funds, 401ks, 403bs. That's primarily all that's there. Although they have opened up many of these retirement accounts to invest in single stocks. And so you can check out single stocks. I know that our company retirement plan that I offer employees, it's a simple IRA. I match dollar for dollar, 3% of their pay. I make any new employee, they're opted in automatically. They have to sign a 16-page document to get out of it. The first page says, I'm dumb, and they have to sign it. The second page, I don't know how to do math. No one has filled it out, but I do have the document. And so I'm giving them this money, and I've set it up to where they could, I selected the option with Schwab that they can buy and sell individual stocks. So it's always fun in the office having the conversation. Hey, what stock should I invest in? And I remember, it's 2 years ago, one of my buddies, David Nimmons on our team, he said, I think I'm going to buy Amazon stock. I've got a couple grand in here and it's like $950 a share. Should I buy it? I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. That's so overpriced. It is awful. And so he bought it anyhow. It tells you how good my team listens. And now it's $3,000 a share or almost. And so I'm over here saying, it's still overpriced. It's going to go down. But meanwhile, the Amazon truck comes up my driveway 7 times a day. It seems like I think I missed on that one. But, we won't always get it right.
Yeah.
But that's a type of investment. Other types are real estate, single family real estate. It could be a duplex or fourplex. A great story is my nephew. He went to Purdue. He was an engineer. He graduated. He's single. He bought a 5-bedroom house. And the reason he did it is he has a government job and a bunch of his coworkers are on 1-year contracts with the government. And he knows they're not moving their family for a 1-year contract. So he rents out the rooms to these guys. And so he rented out the 4 extra bedrooms in his house. He never paid a payment on his house. And they paid all the payments, covered it all, paid extra. 6 years into this, he met Laura and he's like, all right, all y'all got to leave. The last one left the day before he got married. For real. Half of his house was paid off. And 1 month ago, at age 33, he and his wife paid off the last payment on their house. They own it outright at age 33.
That's awesome.
That's called house hacking, renting out a room in your house. So get creative.
Yeah. What's the one thing, if we had time to talk more, what's the one last piece of advice you would give the listener when it comes to winning with their money?
I would say embrace continual learning. Become a continual learner. Money is a continual learning thing. There's people who are struggling who are listening to this podcast, and we just talked about investing and they just wanted to tune out because it doesn't apply to them right now. It doesn't apply. But if they do this stuff and they start living by a budget, start the beginning investments, all of a sudden this investing is going to become relevant to them, and they could re-listen to this podcast 5 years from now and it will speak to them at a whole nother level.
Yeah.
So be a continual learner and start consuming books, whether by audio, by print, and go to some of the conferences. I'll list some of my favorite authors. You know, of course, Joe Sangl's books. My books are obviously fantastic, but the ones that have heavily influenced me, Robert Kiyosaki's books, The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Cash Flow Quadrant. 2 fantastic books that will literally change how you view money and how you view investing. A book that changed my life, it's a fictional novel, is written by David Chilton, a Canadian, called The Wealthy Barber. And it's a great story about how this guy, even as a kid, went and visited his barber, and he felt so sad for his barber, how he's obviously so broke and he's still having to cut hair. Here he is, a grown adult, and he's making all this money, and now this barber's still cutting his hair and he's making no money. He's so poor. And then he finds out his barber's a millionaire. And it teaches the principle of compound interest. And I will tell you, 13 and 14-year-olds can get that book and understand it, comprehend it. It's a great book. And then one last one, it's a sneaky money book. It's called Me, Myself, and Bob. And it's by Phil Vischer, the creator of VeggieTales. And I tell everyone it's the best business book I've ever read. And it writes the stories of the meteoric rise of VeggieTales. I'm sure you were subjected to VeggieTales.
Oh, Jean-Claude.
Jean-Claude and Madame Blueberry.
Yeah.
And and Hamburger and Where's My Hairbrush? And he writes about how they made $13 million in profit one year. They were creating a studio to take on Disney. And it was a legitimate challenger to Disney. And they went to the big screen with a movie and how he had taken his eye off the ball and off the numbers. And as the big movie about Jonah released, he knew it was doomed and they went bankrupt one year after making $13 million. And he talks about how he took his eye off the ball and this thing that he had been birthed out of him, characters as an artist. He owned them. He saw those characters and all of his shows that he had worked so hard to produce. He saw them auctioned off at a bankruptcy auction and he lost control of them. And it is a profound story that will really help people learn about business, about investing, and it's humorous as well. Phil Vischer's very humorous. And if you can laugh at your own financial drop like that, I think we can all learn from that. So I just encourage you to be a continual learner. You won't get it all in one podcast. You won't get it all in one step. Don't try to do it all in one step. Piece by piece, put one foot in front of the other. Before you know, you'll look back and say, man, the Lord has brought me a mighty, mighty long way.
Well, Joe, thank you so much. We all want to ride the wave, get to that surplus, not just for ourselves, but to bless everybody around us, generations to come. I appreciate you giving your life to not just dispensing knowledge, but to honestly inspiring us. You make me want to do better. You really do. You fire me up. And it's because of who you are, what God's doing in you, what he does through you. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yep. I'll just give one encouragement to everybody as we close out. I'm not a unique person. Ken, you're not a unique person other than that we're uniquely made. But listen, the lessons we've learned financially, you can apply all these. They're available to all. Go apply them and watch them work for you. You can do this.
Thanks for listening to the More with Murphy podcast. It's our hope that listening will help you discover and embrace more in your life. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and subscribe and feel free to share. You can also help us achieve more on the podcast by writing a review of the show. Positive reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, get new and exciting guests, and tell us what content you are loving. Who knows, we might just read your review on the show. Did you know that we also give 5 of you free coffee every episode? All you have to do is take a screenshot while you're listening, tag @KenWMurphy, and post it to your Instagram story. We'll pick 5 random winners and send you a Starbucks gift card. Finally, if you want to learn more about our guests or the resources mentioned on the show, check out our website at morewithmurphy.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for More with Murphy.